Horrid Henry's Dreadful Deeds by Francesca Simon, illustrated by Tony Ross. A collection of 7 short stories. Story number 2, Horrid Henry and the Dinner Guests. Horrid Henry and the Dinner Guests. Fizz, pop, gurgle, bang. Horrid Henry sat on the kitchen floor watching his new dungeon drink kit brew a bubbly purple potion. Belch, crunch, ooze, splat. Beside it, a grisly ghoul grub box heaved and spewed some rotten Krispies. Dad dashed into the kitchen. Want a crisp? Said Henry, smirking. No, said Dad, putting on his apron. And I've told you before to play with those disgusting kits in your bedroom. Why Henry's grandmother had bought him those terrible toys for Christmas, he would never know. Henry, I want you to listen carefully, said Dad, fervishly rolling out pastry. Mum's new boss and her husband are coming to dinner in an hour. I want total cooperation and perfect behavior. Yeah, said Henry, his eyes glued to the frothing machine. Horrid Henry's parents didn't have guests for dinner very often. The last time they did, Henry had sneaked downstairs, eaten the entire chocolate cake Dad had baked for dessert, and then been sick all over the sofa. The time before that, he'd put whoopee cushions on all the guest seats, bitten Peter, and broken the banister by sliding down it. Dad started getting pots and pans down. What are you cooking? Said Perfect Peter, tidying up his stamps. Salmon wrapped in pastry, with lime and ginger, said Dad, staring at his list. Yummy, said Perfect Peter, my favorite. Yuck, said Horrid Henry. I want pizza. What's for pudding? Chocolate mousse, said Dad. Can I help? Said Peter. Of course, said Mom, smiling. You can pass around the nuts and crisps when Mr. and Miss Mossy arrive. Nuts? Crisps? Henry's ears perked up. I'll help too, said Henry. Mum looked at him. We'll see, she said. I don't think Henry should pass round the nuts, said Peter. He'll only eat them himself. Shut up, Peter, snarled Henry. Mom, Henry told me to shut up, wailed Peter. Henry, stop being horrid, muttered Dad, grating ginger and squeezing limes. While Dad rolled up salmon and pastry, Mum dashed about setting the table with the best china. Hey, you haven't set enough places, said Henry. You've only set the table for 4. That's right, said Mum. Miss Mossy, Mr. Mossy, Dad, and me. What about me? Said Henry. And me, said Peter. This is a grown-ups party, said Mum. You want me to go to bed? Henry stuttered. I'm not eating with you? No, said Dad. It's not fair, shrieked Henry. What am I having for supper then? A cheese sandwich, said Dad. We've got to get ready for the guest. I'm already 2 minutes behind my schedule. I'm not eating this swill, shrieked Henry, shoving the sandwich off his plate. I want pizza. That's okay, Dad, said Peter, tucking into his sandwich. I understand that grown-ups need to be by themselves sometimes. Henry lunged at Peter. He was a cannibal trussing his victim for the pot. Arr! Shrieked Peter. That's it, Henry. Go to bed, shouted Mum. I won't, screamed Henry. I want chocolate mousse. Go upstairs and stay upstairs, shouted Mom. Ding dong. Ugh, squealed Dad. They're early. I haven't finished the mousse yet. Horrid Henry stomped upstairs to his bedroom and slammed the door. He was so angry he could hardly speak. The injustice of it all. Why should he go to bed while Mom and Dad were downstairs, having fun and eating chocolate mousse? The delicious smell of melting chocolate wafted into his nostrils. Henry's tummy rumbled. If Mom and Dad thought he'd stay in bed. While they all had fun downstairs, they had rocks for brains. Screech! Screech! Perfect Peter must be playing his cello for Mom and Dad and the guests. Which meant, Horrid Henry smiled. The coast was clear. Hello, nuts, here I come, thought Henry. Henry tiptoed downstairs. The screechy, scratchy sounds continued from the sitting room. Horrid Henry sneaked into the empty kitchen. There were the bowls of nuts and crisps, and the drinks all ready to serve. Cashews, my favorite. I'll just have a few, he thought. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Boy, these nuts were good. Irresistible, really, thought Henry. A few more would go down a treat. And if he poured the remaining nuts into a smaller bowl, no one would notice how many he'd eaten. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Just one more, thought Henry, and that's it. Horrid Henry swizzled his fingers around the nut bowl. Uh-oh, there were only 3 nuts left. Yikes, thought Henry. Now I'm in trouble. Fizz, pop, gurgle, bang, belch, crunch, ooze, splat. Horrid Henry looked at his grisly grub box and dungeon drink kit and bopped himself on the head. What an idiot he was! What better time to try out his grisly grub than now? Henry examined the rotten crisps he made earlier. They looked like crisps, but certainly didn't taste like them. The only problem was what to do with the good crisps. Yum, yum, thought Henry, crunching crisps as fast as he could. Then he refilled the bowl with rotten Krispies. Next, Henry poured 2 frothing dungeon drinks into glasses and put them on the tray. Perfect, thought Henry. Now to make some nasty nuts to replace all those cashews. The kitchen door opened. Dad came in. What are you doing, Henry? I told you to go to bed. Mom said I could serve the nuts, said Henry, lying shamelessly. Then he grabbed the 2 bowls and escaped. The sound of applause came from the sitting room. Perfect Peter bowed modestly. Isn't he adorable? Said Miss Mossy. And so talented, said Mr. Mossy. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bossy, said Henry. Mum looked horrified. Mossy, not Bossy, dear, said Mum. But that's what you call them, Mum, said Henry, smiling sweetly. Henry is just going to bed, said Mum, blushing. No, I wasn't, said Henry. I was going to serve the nuts and crisps. Don't you remember? Oh, I love nuts, said Miss Mossy. I told you to stay upstairs, hissed Mum. Mum, wailed Peter. You said I could serve the guests. You can serve the crisps, Peter, and Henry graciously handed him the bowl of rotten Krispies. Would you like a cashew, Miss Bossy? Mossy, hissed Mum. Oh, cashew's my favorite, said Miss Mossy. She plunged her fingers into the mostly empty nut bowl and finally scooped up the remaining 3. Henry snatched 2 back. You're only supposed to have 1 nut at a time, he said. Don't be greedy. Henry, said Mom, don't be rude. Want a nut? Said Henry, having the bowl in front of Mr. Mossy. Why, yes, said Mr. Mossy, but he was too late. Henry had already moved away to serve Mum. Want a nut? He asked. Mum's hand reached out to take one, but Henry quickly whisked the bowl away. Henry, said Mum. Do have some crisps, Miss Mossy, said Perfect Peter. Miss Mossy scooped up a large handful of rotten Krispies and then stuffed them in her mouth. Her face went purple, then pink, then green. Bleh! She spluttered, spitting them out all over Mr. Mossy. Peter, run and get Miss Mossy something to drink, shouted Mom. Peter dashed to the kitchen and brought back a frothing drink. Thank you, gasped Miss Mossy, taking the glass and gulping it down. Ugh! She spluttered, spitting it out. Are you trying to poison me, you horrible child? She choked, flailing her arms and crashing into Dad, who had just walked in carrying the drinks tray. Crash! Splash! Mum, Dad, Peter, and Mr. and Mrs. Mossy were soaked. Peter, what have you done? Shouted Mum. Perfect Peter burst into tears and ran out of the room. Oh dear, I'm so sorry, said Mum. Never mind, said Miss Mossy through gritted teeth. Sit down, everyone, said Henry. I'm going to do a show now. No, said Mum. No, said Dad. But Peter did one, howled Henry. I want to do a show. All right, said Mum, but just a quick one. Henry sang. The guests held their ears. Not so loud, Henry, said Mum. Henry pirouetted, trampling on his guest. Oof, said Mr. Mossy, clutching his toe. Aren't you finished, Henry? Said Dad. Henry juggled, dropping both balls on Miss Mossy's head. Ow, said Miss Mossy. Now I'll show you my new karate moves, said Henry. No, shouted Mum and Dad. But before anyone could stop him, Henry's arms and legs flew out in a mad karate dance. Hi-ya! Shrieked Henry, knocking into Mr. Mossy. Mr. Mossy went flying across the room. Whoosh! Off flew his toupee. Click-clack! Out bounced his false teeth. Reginald! Gasped Miss Mossy. Are you all right? Speak to me! Groaned Mr. Mossy. Isn't that great? Said Henry. Who wants to go next? What's that terrible smell? Choked Miss Mossy. Oh no, screamed Dad. The salmon is burning. Mom and Dad ran into the kitchen, followed by Mr. and Miss Mossy. Smoke poured from the oven. Mum grabbed a tea towel and started whacking the burning salmon. Whack, thwack. Watch out, screamed Dad. The towel thwacked the bowl of chocolate mousse and sent it crashing to the ground. Splat! There was chocolate mousse on the floor. There was chocolate mousse on the ceiling. And there was chocolate mousse all over Mr. and Miss Mossy, Mum, Dad, and Henry. Oh no, said Mum, holding her head in her hands. Then she burst into tears. What are we going to do? Leave it to me, Mum, said Horrid Henry. He marched to the phone. Pizza Delights, he said. I'd like to order a Mega Whopper, please.